Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Life Means Struggle. A black, single dad was on his way to the most important interview of his life when he unexpectedly saw a lost little girl trembling and full of fear. Without hesitation, he chose to help. He took her home, unaware that the girl's mother, whom he was about to meet, was the CEO of the very company whose interview he had just missed. What the woman told him in that mansion will completely shock you. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The clock on the wall had stopped ticking, but David Harper no longer paid it any mind. It was 6:40 in the morning, and every passing second was a suffocating wait. His small apartment filled with Gracie's ragged breaths, his 10-year-old daughter struggling with a severe asthma attack. David knelt by her bed, his hand pressed against her small, heaving chest, holding the nebulizer mask tightly to her mouth. He watched Gracie's thin body with each desperate gasp twisting something deep inside him. It was a familiar, terrifying dance, one he knew all too well since her diagnosis years ago. A profound helplessness squeezed him, a constant companion. In his life as a single father trying to make ends meet in a city that seemed to chew up and spit out those like him. "Almost done, my love," he whispered, his voice raw with unspoken fear. Gracie's eyes fluttered open, her face pale, and she weakly gave a thumbs up, a fragile, trusting smile. David forced a smile back, one that didn't reach his tired, dark eyes that had seen too many struggles and too little rest. His only dress shirt, faded but carefully ironed, hung on the back of a chair, a fragile symbol of his one chance today. Aldridge Logistics, the name repeated in his mind like a desperate prayer. This wasn't just a big company. It was a last fortress in a world that had consistently slammed its doors in his face. He'd applied to dozens of places, enduring interview after interview, only to receive the same wary looks and cold shakes of the head when they realized he was a black single father with a sick child. But Aldridge was different. They were known for their diversity, for giving chances, a beacon of fairness in a biased city. Their benefits were almost unbelievable, especially the health insurance comprehensive coverage that Gracie needed more than anything. He had to get this job for Gracie, for her expensive monthly asthma medication that cost more than he made in 2 weeks, for the countless hospital visits that were slowly drowning them in debt. "Daddy, will you get the job?" Gracie asked, her voice thin but her eyes bright blue and full of innocence looked straight into his, heartbreakingly fragile. "That's the plan, my love," David said, swallowing, his throat suddenly dry. He tried to project a strength he barely felt. "Then can we buy the blue cake from the store?" Gracie asked again, a faint spark of hope in her eyes. David nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of her simple wish. "If it goes well, we'll buy a really big one, bright blue." He knew he had to be strong, a steady pillar, a solid rock for her to lean on, even when he felt like crumbling. He clutched his old dog-eared job application folder under his arm, the worn edges a testament to his persistent struggle, and slipped on his equally worn-out shoes. He glanced at the small framed photo of Gracie's mother on the bedside table, a quick silent prayer. Downtown Aldridge Logistics, full-time work, real benefits. He kissed Gracie's forehead, lingering for a moment, etching her sweet face into his memory. "Stay inside, okay? I'll call you when I get home." Gracie nodded, already picking up her crayon. "I'll draw you something for good luck." David smiled a bitter, weary smile. "Your mom's drawing always brought me luck." He whispered a quick goodbye and hurried down the stairs, each step echoing the urgency of his mission. It was 7:15 in the morning. David was jogging through the dreary streets, the cool air doing little to calm his nerves. Sweat soaked through his faded shirt, clinging uncomfortably to his skin. The city blurred past him, run-down storefronts and grimy alleys, familiar sights that now seemed strangely distant in his rush. By 7:30, he was on the bus, packed among sleepy commuters, his lips silently rehearsing his answers for the interview, trying to mentally escape the crushing reality of their situation. When the bus screeched to a halt at the corner of 9th and Elm, David stepped out into the humid morning heat. Aldridge Logistics, a towering glass and steel monument to corporate power, was still 7 blocks away. It was 8:45, 15 minutes early for his interview. He breathed a sigh of relief, a brief flicker of hope, and continued walking, his steps firmer now, his chest filled with a fragile yet determined optimism. He was a black man with an iron will forged in the crucible of hardship. Not easily defeated, he would make this work. Then he heard it, a discordant, sharp sound that cut through the low hum of urban noise. The unmistakable, heart-wrenching sob of a child. David stopped dead in his tracks. He saw a small girl, no older than 6, huddled alone on a public bench, her tiny hands covering her face. Her whole body trembled with desperate, quiet cries. People flowed past her, a stream of hurried, indifferent faces, businessmen in sharp suits, mothers pushing strollers, students with backpacks. No one stopped. David's pace slowed, each step a fierce internal struggle. His crumpled job application felt heavy under his arm, a physical manifestation of everything he was risking. He looked at the towering Aldridge Logistics building, then back at the small, pitiable girl. His entire future, Gracie's future, hinged on those next 15 minutes. This was the hardest choice of his life. Not now. Not today. This is my only chance. Gracie depends on me, he told himself, willing his legs to keep moving, to let someone else help, but no one did. The sight tore at David's heart, awakening a deep primal fear. The raw, painful memory of Gracie getting lost in a crowded store. Years ago, her terrified face etched forever in his mind surged back. That pain, that visceral terror, was stronger than any logic, stronger than any career. Opportunity. He wouldn't leave this child alone. His feet moved on their own, guided by an invisible force. He walked slowly, deliberately toward the crying girl. "Hello," he said softly, his voice gentle. "Are you okay?" The girl, startled, looked up, her blue eyes drenched in tears. "I don't know where my driver went," she whispered, her voice barely audible. David knelt, bringing himself to her level. "I understand. I'd be scared too. What's your name, Ellie?" "I'm David. I just want to help you. Do you know your address?" Ellie nodded, her small head bobbing. "Great. We'll figure this out together." Ellie hesitated for a moment, then, with a heartbreaking display of trust, extended a tiny hand. David gently took it, his large, calloused hand engulfing her small one. His job application was now hopelessly crumpled, but he didn't care. He didn't look at his watch anymore. He knew he was sacrificing everything, but a deeper, more fundamental part of him knew this was the only path he could take. He and Ellie, two strangers, held hands, walking together through the hurried city. Life, one small act of kindness against the indifference of the world. They had walked about half a mile, turning onto Hanover Place, a street lined with sprawling, elegant houses. David felt a prickling sensation, a sense of being watched. At the grand ornate gate of the largest house, a stern-faced security guard in a crisp navy blue suit stood blocking the way, his eyes full of suspicion. "May I help you, sir?" he asked, his tone flat. "This little girl is looking for her house. She said she lives here," David replied, keeping his voice calm and even. The guard's eyes narrowed, sweeping over David's faded shirt and lingering on his dark skin. David felt the familiar sting of judgment, a feeling he'd become painfully accustomed to. "This is my house," Ellie confirmed, her small voice surprisingly firm. The guard, still skeptical, pressed his walkie-talkie. Miss Aldridge, the girl is back with a man." A tense, suffocating silence stretched between them. David felt as if he was on trial, his every move scrutinized. The ornate gate slowly swung open. The guard, however, remained in his path. "Sir," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "perhaps you should wait here." David stiffened, the familiar surge of humiliation rising in his chest. He took a deep breath, choosing to remain calm for Ellie's sake. But Ellie, sensing the unspoken tension, pulled on his hand and looked up at the guard, her voice surprisingly sharp. "No, he helped me. Don't make him stay outside." The guard, caught off guard by the child's defiance, reluctantly stepped back. They walked inside, stepping onto the meticulously manicured lawn. The grand front door opened, and a woman in a sharp white blazer stood there. Vanessa Aldridge, radiating an aura of formidable power. Her face, initially pale with worry, immediately shifted to relief upon seeing Ellie. She rushed forward, sweeping her daughter into a tight embrace. "Oh, Ellie, I thought he helped me, Mommy. He didn't leave me," Ellie sobbed, burying her face in her mother's shoulder, clutching her tight. Vanessa looked up, her sharp, intelligent eyes locking onto David, still filled with suspicion. She frowned, her gaze sweeping over David's faded shirt and lingering on his dark skin, a subtle judgment in her expression. "You brought her back," she said. "Yes, she was alone crying. I couldn't just walk away," David said, his voice and gaze steady. Vanessa, her tone cool and edged with suspicion, questioned again, "Why were you with her?" Her eyes shone with a protective fierceness. "I was going for a job interview," he explained, his voice now tired and resigned. "I was on time, maybe even late by now. I had a chance, my only chance for a good job. But I saw a child crying alone, and my conscience wouldn't allow me to leave her. My daughter Gracie also got lost once, and the fear I felt then, I couldn't do it." His words, quiet yet powerful, revealed the unwavering moral compass that guided his life. Vanessa didn't move, studying him intently. Ellie tugged at her mother's sleeve. "He didn't ask for anything, Mommy," she said. David's voice softened further as he looked at Ellie with affection. "I have another daughter. Her name is Gracie, and she also has asthma and needs medication. A good job with good insurance, that's all I'm looking for." Something flickered in Vanessa's eyes, a spark of understanding, maybe even intrigue. She looked at him more carefully, as if connecting the final pieces of a puzzle. "Do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice gentler now. David shook his head. "No, ma'am. I am Vanessa Aldridge, CEO of Aldridge Logistics." David froze as the weight of the revelation hit him. It was the height of irony. He had just sacrificed a life-changing opportunity to help the daughter of the very woman he was trying to work for. "I was going to your building for an interview logistics coordinator," he stammered, crushed by the realization of a missed chance. Vanessa slowly nodded, then pulled out a crisp wad of cash and extended it to David. "Here is to thank you, Mr. Harper, for your time and kindness." David gently pushed her hand back. "No need, ma'am. I didn't do it for money." His pride, though battered, remained intact. Vanessa watched him for a long moment, her expression unreadable, part assessment, part dawning respect. She glanced at the crumpled job application under his arm. "All right, Mr. Harper. Just leave your resume here. I'll look it over later. Thank you for bringing her back." She said nothing more and turned, taking Ellie's hand and disappearing into the grand house, the heavy door closing silently behind her. David stood there, surrounded by silence and crushing disappointment. Despite doing the right thing, he felt the invisible barriers the world placed around him, barriers built from circumstance and skin color. He turned and walked away like a shadow, the crumpled job application in his hand a bitter reminder of a dream deferred, perhaps lost forever. It was 10:15 a.m. The interview was over. The opportunity had slipped through his fingers. He had lost everything. The walk back to the bus stop felt longer than the one to the interview. Every step weighed down by resignation. At 4 p.m., David finally arrived at his small, quiet apartment. As he pushed open the door, a chilling silence greeted him. Gracie wasn't there. His heart seized. He rushed to his neighbor, Miss Evans, the kind elderly woman who often looked after Gracie. "Hello, David," she said, her face lined with worry. "So glad you're back. Gracie was here from noon, but she went out again a while ago. I thought she went to find you." David's blood ran cold, fear washing over him. "Gracie," he called, his voice a raw, desperate cry. Then he saw her across the street, sitting on a low concrete wall outside the convenience store, hugging her sketchbook. He ran, his legs fueled by terror and relief. "Gracie." He choked out. She looked up, her face breaking into a radiant smile. "I was waiting for you, Daddy," she said sweetly. David knelt and pulled her into a fierce hug, burying his face in her hair. "I'm so sorry, Gracie. Daddy's so sorry." She hugged him back tightly. "It's okay, Daddy. I drew you something." She opened her sketchbook to reveal a vivid drawing of him in a collared shirt under a bright blue sky, holding a small hand. Next to them was a giant blue cake, and Gracie stood beside him, smiling. "Did you get the job, Daddy?" she asked. With hopeful eyes, he shook his head, his throat tight. "Not yet, my love. Not yet." The sharp sting of disappointment tore through him, but he lifted her up, holding her close. Their small world settled into silence as Gracie leaned her head on his shoulder, sensing the sadness in him. That night, as David sat beside her, watching her sleep peacefully, his worn-out phone buzzed. A strange number lit the screen. He hesitated, heart pounding with dread and a fragile thread of hope. He answered with a tired whisper, "Hello, Mr. Harper." Vanessa Aldridge's voice, cool and professional, rang out from the other end. "This is Vanessa Aldridge." David stiffened, his body tensing. "Yes, ma'am." She continued, her tone revealing nothing. "I did a little digging on you, Mr. Harper. Ellie mentioned she heard you talk about having a daughter named Gracie, who has asthma." David felt a surge of confusion. "Yes, ma'am, that's right." Vanessa's voice was decisive as she said, "I want to invite you for another interview tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at my office. Don't miss it this time." David was stunned, speechless. A blinding ray of light, unexpected and almost unbelievable, pierced through the dark night of his despair. He blinked, trying to process her words, trying to believe that this was real. "Yes, yes, ma'am. I'll be there." The call ended. David still held the phone, his hand trembling, his mind reeling with an almost overwhelming sense of disbelief and a fragile burgeoning hope. A second chance. He didn't know why she was doing this, what had changed. But he knew with every fiber of his being that he had to seize it for Gracie. The next morning, David, dressed in his now slightly less crumpled but still faded dress shirt, arrived at Aldridge Logistics. This time, he wasn't directed to a waiting room. Instead, he was personally escorted directly up to the 60th floor by Natalie Quinn, Vanessa's efficient assistant. Vanessa Aldridge sat behind her large, polished desk, her eyes as sharp and discerning as ever. "Mr. Harper," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I've reviewed your resume. Frankly, it's quite underwhelming for the positions we typically hire. But your actions yesterday morning, they intrigued me deeply." David swallowed hard, his throat tight. He knew this wasn't a normal interview. This was the moment. This was the time to prove himself, to show her that the man who saved her daughter was far more than just a piece of paper could ever convey. I don't want to hear about your past work experience, Vanessa continued, leaning forward slightly. I want you to solve a problem. Imagine this. Aldridge Logistics is facing a major supply chain crisis. A sudden blizzard has frozen our main routes, leaving hundreds of our trucks stranded. Key clients are threatening to cancel their contracts. Our entire system is in chaos. In just 30 minutes, I want you to present a detailed step-by-step plan to resolve this crisis. All the information you need, real-time data, maps, reports, is on this computer. She pointed to a laptop on the opposite desk. David looked at the screen, displaying dozens of complex charts, weather patterns, intricate route maps, and damage reports. This wasn't an interview. This was a high-stakes real-world challenge, a test of his very essence. David felt an immense pressure building inside him, but beneath it, a surge of adrenaline, a determination he hadn't felt in years. He took a deep, centering breath. He had to do this for Gracie. He began to type, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his eyes scanning the numbers, his brain working at full capacity, piecing together information. He recalled every fragmented bit of knowledge, every practical lesson from his years of struggling, from managing deliveries for small businesses to planning the most efficient routes for Gracie's doctor appointments. 20 minutes later, Vanessa still sat silently observing, her face unreadable. David looked up, his face set, his voice steady. I'm ready to present, ma'am. David began to speak, his voice initially a little shaky, but as he delved into his plan, it grew confident, strong. He presented a detailed strategy, utilizing lesser-known alternative routes, leveraging local warehouses for emergency transshipment, coordinating with city authorities to prioritize clearing key intersections. He even proposed a proactive media strategy to reassure clients and partners, something Vanessa hadn't considered. He meticulously pointed out potential weaknesses in their current system and suggested robust long-term solutions. Vanessa listened in silence, but David saw the subtle shift in her eyes. From initial skepticism, they widened slightly in surprise. And then gradually, a deep, impressed admiration began to glow. When David finished, a long, profound silence hung in the air. Mr. Harper, Vanessa finally said, her voice no longer cool or detached, but a blend of genuine surprise and profound respect. I have never seen anyone come up with such a comprehensive and creative solution in such a short time under such pressure. You have a brilliant mind, David, and a remarkable heart. In that moment, Vanessa realized her initial prejudices about David were entirely, spectacularly wrong. She pushed a crisp new employment contract across the polished desk. This isn't for a logistics coordinator position, Mr. Harper. I am offering you the role of Director of Social Responsibility Programs at Aldridge Logistics. The salary, the benefits, all the terms, they are all laid out here. David stared at the contract, his eyes fixed on the word director. It was a position, a title, a future he had never dared to dream of, never even imagined was possible for a man like him. He looked up at Vanessa, his voice choked with emotion, tears blurring his vision. All the years of struggle, the grinding poverty, the constant rejections, the biting judgments, the doors slammed shut in his face, they all seemed to dissolve in that single incredible moment. Me, he whispered, barely audible. Vanessa smiled, a genuine warm smile. This isn't mere repayment for bringing Ellie home. Mr. Harper, I saw your true talent. Your extraordinary capacity, a talent for problem-solving, combined with unparalleled compassion, something I've never found in anyone else. That is why I trust you, David. David left the towering Aldridge Logistics building not with his old tattered resume, but with a brand new, meticulously prepared employment contract clutched tightly in his hand. He breathed out a long, shuddering sigh, feeling as though the shuddering sigh, feeling as though the crushing weight of a lifetime had been lifted from his shoulders. A new chapter had begun. 2 days later, Gracie was stable and finally back home, her breathing even and calm. David returned to work at Aldrich, a completely different man. He knew what Vanessa had done for him, the immense trust she had placed in him. She had not only presented his project successfully to the board, securing the vital funding, but she had also completely removed Richard Stone, clearing the path for his vision. The multi-million-dollar project had been approved, ensuring a stable, thriving future for David's program, and he had received resounding praise from the board of directors, who now looked at him with respect and admiration. 1 week later, David received an invitation from Natalie Quinn. "Vanessa's assistant, Miss Aldridge, would like to invite you for a private dinner at the Pinnacle restaurant this Friday evening." David felt a sense of formality, a new kind of anticipation he had never known before. That Friday evening, David wore his best suit, a dark, well-fitted one he'd saved for special occasions. He arrived at the Pinnacle, an exclusive, elegant restaurant high above the city. Vanessa was already waiting, not in her usual crisp business blazer, but in a flowing, elegant deep blue dress, radiating an understated power that was undeniably hers. The meal passed in a relaxed, comfortable atmosphere. They talked freely about work, about the new positive changes at Aldrich, about Gracie and Ellie, and about the ambitious future plans for the social responsibility program. After dessert, Vanessa placed a small velvet box on the table between them. "David," she said, her voice now completely warm and genuinely sincere, "I want to officially give you this." David opened the box, his fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a gleaming silver lapel pin, the Aldridge Logistics logo exquisitely engraved with the words Director of Social Responsibility Programs, David Harper, etched beneath it. This wasn't just a pin. This was a symbol of validation, of profound recognition, of absolute, unwavering trust. "And here," Vanessa said, sliding a thick envelope across the table. Inside was the official contract formally signed by her, detailing a significantly higher salary and benefits package. "This is compensation for all you've contributed, David, not just for Gracie, not just for Ellie, but because you've proven time and again that you are the best person for this role. You don't just have a heart. You have vision, integrity, and the extraordinary ability to make the impossible possible. You believed in me?" David asked again, his voice thick with emotion, tears brimming in his eyes. He still found it hard to grasp, to fully comprehend this incredible turn of events. "I saw it in you, David," Vanessa said, her eyes looking deep into his without a trace of doubt. "A man who dared to prioritize conscience over personal gain, and a mind that dared to think differently, to see solutions where others only saw problems. A man who, despite every prejudice, every invisible barrier, managed to shine through with his own competence and character. I don't just need a director, David. I need a leader with heart and vision, and that is exactly who you are." That evening, he and Gracie walked home, the city lights twinkling around them. Gracie skipped ahead of him, her small shadow dancing in the street lights. Then she ran back to take his hand, her fingers warm and trusting in his. "Can I tell Miss Evans that you're the boss now, Daddy?" she asked, her voice full of childish excitement. David chuckled, a deep joyful sound, pulling her close for a hug. "You can tell her anything you want, my love." "I'll tell her my daddy is a lifesaver," she declared, her eyes shining up at him. He stopped, his heart swelling with an emotion too profound for words. "You know I didn't save her, sweetie. I just showed up, Gracie smiled, a knowing, wise little smile. That's the same thing, Daddy. But back home, their small apartment felt warmer, brighter, filled with a quiet sense of peace and security. Gracie, ever the artist, carefully taped Ellie's drawing to the refrigerator right next to her own vibrant artwork. David sat at their humble kitchen table, looking at his new gleaming lapel pin. Then he glanced down at the small star pin, Gracie's first gift, still clipped to his old faded shirt, which he hadn't taken off. He didn't remove it. He would always keep it carefully in his wallet, a silent reminder of the day he chose. Compassion over career, and how that single selfless act had transformed everything. It was a tangible symbol of his core values, a quiet beacon that would guide his decisions in the bright, uncertain future. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.